Just
Perfect.
like that.
And you're on.
And here we go.
Well, hello, ladies. Thank you for doing this.
Hey,
So we
Stephanie.
are with the lovely Annie, and we are with the lovely Amanda from the Highladies podcast. So we've been, I think, connected before. We wanted to chat for a while, so I'm just glad it worked out and everything aligned.
Yep.
And we're able to chat today. So hi and welcome, welcome. We've been chatting a little bit, and Amanda was like, press record. And it's so true because like I'll talk to you forever. It's awesome. So one thing I want to mention first and foremost is your podcast, Highladies, is fantastic. And I've listened to it multiple times. And I knew I wanted to connect and have this chat. So can you explain to everyone who has not heard about it or who does not know about it, what it's about? What is your intention, your mission, your platform regarding?
Ooh, so many questions.
So many. I know.
Amanda and I started Highladies podcast because we did realize and see a need for a female-led conversation around cannabis.
Right.
And a female-led conversation that's sort of mom-centric.
Yes.
There's so much stigma to work through, 100 years of stigma to work through. Right. And we thought through honest conversation and sharing like-minded stories of life, that we could help people realize that they're not alone in their cannabis use, or they're not cannabis use. So we do come from a point of cannabis, but we branch off into every direction.
All kinds of tangents. And
so we just finished recording season 2. So we have 36 episodes out there. You can find us on all listening platforms. We are Highladies Podcast on Instagram. We just surpassed 7,000 followers. It's super exciting.
Just saw that's amazing.
Yeah. So I think we were right. There's a need for this conversation, and people are responding to it.
Well, and I want to say too, like women, like this idea of women and cannabis use. It is a male-dominated, or typically, it is a male-dominated framework, and which is interesting to me because I think women very much have a place in it. So one of my first questions was why do you think that is? Like, why is it so associated from a male perspective when I think females are very much within that circle of it?
Yeah. I think it comes back to sort of that the structure of a corporation, right? Where for hundreds and hundreds of years, the structure of corporate anything has been male-led, male-dominated. It's mostly men.
Also, I think because it was illegal for so long that in general, men are more accepted into the thug life. We have to protect our babies and do all those things. Like, I never once had a female pot dealer, and I had dozens of pot dealers. They were always guys.
Oh, really?
Never had a female pot dealer.
I didn't know that. I had female pot dealers. I definitely had female pot dealers growing up, but those female pot dealers, then now that you say that, I've never thought of this before, had older brothers who were already in the game, if you will. Yeah. I didn't have any, like, I don't know what the word, eau couture.
Mine were all scuzzy dudes in basement apartments.
Yeah.
And the thing is, that's the image. No, but that's the image. That is very much the image. Right?
And that's not reality. The image does not. And it's funny too, Stephanie, because women are known as gardeners. We are great at creating things, at growing things, at nurturing things. So the idea of men being the only ones who can grow a pot plant, I mean, it makes no sense.
No, I completely agree, for sure.
And I think in the during that illegal time, I bet we still had tons of women growing and consuming cannabis.
Absolutely.
But maybe integrated it into their gardens a little bit more.
So we did a lot of research coming into, do we want to do a podcast, and what's out there as far as podcasts?
See, and that was really interesting when we both love podcasts, and that was one of the things that kind of drew us together, because we would chit chat about different podcasts that we were listening to. And we knew things, we didn't necessarily knew what we wanted, but we knew what we didn't want. So we were able to be like, okay, we want to do voice only. We don't want to have anything on YouTube, on any other platform where our faces are shown, because that's not were not necessarily our best selves, especially in the very beginning. You know, we were uncomfortable and we were getting out of our comfort zone.
We're still a bit twitchy on camera, so we can be a lot more relaxed when it's just us talking.
Voice, yeah. But we were very confident and very comfortable having conversations with each other. We used to have these great cannabis chats over the phone before the podcast started.
We talked on the phones.
Yeah, we talked on the phone. Yeah. But we would have and then we kind of said to each other, like, wouldn't it be great if we were recording these conversations and other people could listen to it? Absolutely. And then it was like,
there you go.
We need to make a podcast. But we knew we didn't want anything. We didn't want to be high when we recorded. We knew that we wanted to have our wits about us. We wanted it to be well researched. Right. We wanted other people's opinions, and we wanted the sound to be really good. And we said, if we can hit those points, we will get a dozen people who might be interested in this. And that would be a lot of fun to have 12 people who were listening to us and were like, hey, I think the same thing that you do.
Yeah. Right? And now we've got listeners all over the world. We made the charts in Sweden, which is hilarious. I don't know how we made the charts in Sweden, but we did. Back to that, when we were listening to podcasts, trying to be like, what do we want? The majority, and there are some great cannabis podcasts out there, but the majority are people smoking cannabis and talking about it. So you're coughing and you're talking about the strain that you can buy in Minnesota. Well, I don't care what strain you can buy in Minnesota because I can't buy it here. Yeah. And I don't want to hear you giggling and all high. Like, that's great. Go be giggly and high, but don't waste my time with it.
Right.
Give me something. Right. And then with the male podcast, the male-led podcast, it is definitely from a male point of view. And there's a lot of women using cannabis for various health reasons.
Yes.
There's a lot of mothers who are using it, like myself, to be a better mom. Right. Amanda and I always talk about Lego pot. Lego cannabis or Lego weed is the kind of weed that makes you want to play Lego with your child. It is different for everybody. You'll have Barbie weed, but you're not a big, so it would be the thing to be like, okay, if I'm going to sit on the floor and invest an hour in being a mom and doing nothing, then I want to be into it. So you can use cannabis to enhance your life in that way. So,
like, I hate Lego. I hate everything about Lego. I hate the little pieces. I hate that all the pieces haven't changed ever since the beginning of time. Like, my brother gave me some of his Lego from 35 years ago, and it all fits with the Lego of today.
That's a good thing.
It is a good thing, but I hate it. I hate everything about Lego. So when I sit down and play Lego and I'm not in the right state of mind, I'm thinking about things like the dishes that are dirty in the sink, the fact that when I'm sitting on the floor playing Lego, I'm thinking about how dirty the floor is.
I should really mop this floor.
This really needs to get mopped.
I got to get these clothes, folded and put away. You have to be there as a mom, right?
So, if I can say to my kids when they come to me and say, hey, Mom, you want to play Lego? And I will go to them, I do, yes, but not right now. Why don't you go and you set it all up? You pick the Legos you want to play with, set them all up on the floor. I'm going to go outside. I actually usually use Annie as my excuse because I'm not fully out of the closet with my kids. Right. So I just kind of avoid the topic a little bit more.
Understood.
Hey, I'm going outside to talk to Annie, and I'll be back in 5 minutes, and then we'll play. And then I'm in that state of mind, right?
And it's funny because I look at Lego like when I'm in it, because I struggle with that a lot. Like I'm doing something and there's 5 other things that I'm thinking about, and I'm very self-aware to be like that. Be here. Yep. Nope. Color the Barbie, like color the outline, color it. But I'm like, even that dialogue, I'm like, and like if my son is playing Lego and I'm like, it's like, Mom, look what I made. I'm like, oh, buddy, that's so awesome. All I'm thinking about is the mess, and that's so bad. And I know it is, and I'm just like, oh man. And it's like,
that's exactly it.
Yeah. And then I feel bad, I feel guilty, and it's just such and I think we've glorified busy to a point. Bad or good, it is what it is, but we've glorified it to the point where the attention is a struggle. Time is such an asset that it's like, should it be though? No, it shouldn't, but it is. So how do we come up with strategies, and how do we do things that help us in a healthy and conscientious way? Absolutely. And I want to go back to what you had mentioned in terms of cannabis as a whole, in terms of the legalization of cannabis. And I think what that has done from a female perspective. So it's now within the home front, and it's creating opportunities, or figuring out, really, it's more of a position we're in, that we have to figure out how to navigate these types of conversations with cannabis, with legal medicinal cannabis use. So how are we, exactly what you had mentioned, how are we broaching the conversation with our kids? How are we broaching the conversations at work, at functions, at family dinners? Like, it's definitely, the legalization of it has definitely brought it into the social and cultural landscape. And I think the role for females is different than for males, is what I've noticed, because we're more guarded, I find, with it. And we are more conscientious of it because we are that nurturing role and our kids, and we hesitate. And that's fine. But it's something I've noticed, where I have male friends that they didn't hesitate really before. Some of them did. And they're happier than a pig in shit now. So it's like, but there's not that sort of shift that they are kind of feeling or experiencing, or at least not that I've noticed. But for females, I am just having conversations with friends of mine I've known for years. And we're just having these conversations recently where I'm like, really? Really? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, you can just say it. Like, that's totally cool. You can just, and it's like, we've never talked about that before. And we didn't, and we hadn't. And this is very new, I think, for how cannabis, like I said, is now within the home front, and it's becoming more regular in terms of topics and how we navigate it. So I'm interested to know how you ladies are navigating those types of conversations, or how you're framing it within your own family nucleus, right? Like how we're coming at it, if that makes sense. And everyone will come at it different, of course, but I'm interested to know how you guys are navigating that.
Amanda and I are both quite different, actually, and I think that's what makes the conversation so interesting. I am very open with my children. They've seen me grow. They've seen me smoke. They know what it is. They've seen you roll. They've seen me roll. They're fascinated watching me roll.
Right.
And it's my feeling. And again, everybody's different, and you can pick and choose where you want to be. But it's my belief that my children are going to be part of this world.
Right.
By the time they're of age, it will have been legal for such a long time. You already see it all over. We need to treat it more like alcohol and less like an illegal drug. And my kids have seen me drink. My kids have been into the LCBO. So if they see it and they know about it, they know I'm willing to talk about it. When it does become a part of their life, they're going to be more likely to come to me and say, hey, I'm thinking about trying this thing, instead of doing it behind my back. And I can give them the power, and knowledge is power, to know what they're getting into.
Absolutely.
And, Amanda isn't quite there yet. Her children are a bit younger than mine. And I've met people, there's a woman who's very heavily involved in the cannabis industry, very well known. And she says she's never smoked a joint in front of her son.
Oh, yeah.
He knows
he's
that
never
she's
seen. And there's no photographs. There's no evidence, if you will, of mom ever having done this.
So that's not true, because I've seen pictures of her doing that, but she says she'll never do it in front of him. So he doesn't have that memory of his mother, that visual of his mother doing it. But she's a huge activist within cannabis. So again, we can all pick and choose. To go back what you were saying before, I think that women are less likely to be out and to be vocal about their cannabis use. Again, going back to the stigma. How can you be a good mom and a pothead? So we have to stop using words like pothead and drug and say it's a medicine. Amanda and I make a point to never call it marijuana on the show.
Nope, taboo word in our.
When we first started, we did by accident, but marijuana goes back to.
Oh, it's it's a super racist term.
Government made up propaganda.
Yep.
Right. So
made to like to stigmatize and to belittle and
reefer madness.
Right. Well, marijuana specifically was targeted at Mexican people. right? And it was like a word to used to mock them and their medicine that they had brought from their, where they were coming from. And
right.
we live in a world where there are certain words that we don't use anymore, because back in the day, we didn't know that it wasn't okay to do or okay to say. Now we have the knowledge, and knowledge is power. We don't use those words anymore. So we've actually, we're starting a little campaign where we're going to be reaching out to news outlets every time they use the word marijuana. And we're going to say, hey, just to let you know, this is the root word this is the root of the word,
the history of the word,
and this is why you shouldn't use it anymore.
And it's a damaging term. It's damaging to the destigmatization, damaging to the many millions of people who use this legitimately as medicine.
Yep.
Right.
From children to old folks.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that cannabis works to minimize seizures in certain people with certain medical conditions. We know that our bodies have an endocannabinoid system. It is built to take in cannabinoids, which come from cannabis, but you can get things that activate other things into your endocannabinoid system. It is in the breast milk that we give to our children.
Naturally,
right? Naturally, we are passing those cannabinoids on to our children.
Yeah.
Jack Kungle says it really well on our podcast one day that when you see teenagers smoking weed, leave them alone, because the little bit of healing that they're doing for their bodies is far less damaging than absolutely anything else that they're going to get themselves into. And it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, so much beautiful golden nuggets in what was said. I think the one thing that I've come across in my own experiences is the comparison to cannabis to alcohol in terms of the home front. So up until my more later years in life, the stigma was the stigma. The imagery that we had growing up as teenagers was very much not like now. Creating that opportunity for dialogue with our kids, you're right, because it's here, it's present. Having those open-ended conversations is important. But I also feel, and what I'm noticing is having those conversations with my kids is going to be so much easier than having conversations with, let's say, one generation back. Parents and relatives that imagery is so ingrained. And I was recently having a conversation with some friends and family about cannabis in general. It really was a general conversation, but I mentioned wine. I was talking about wine because I am a very strong proprietor of my grapes. And my kids make jokes about mommy juice, right? So like, it's funny, but like they know, oh, mommy's having mommy juice at dinner, and like, it's a funny thing and whatever. And we were having that conversation, and I made that comparison. I said, I would never want because my kids are very young right now, like they're like 5 and 3. I said, so for me, I said, I'm going to be very conscientious about my home and who comes into my home, about leaving certain things around, like in general. I said, just being respectful of the space for my kids until they're old enough where they can comprehend what I'm saying, and we have what this is and the medicinal purposes of this. But I am just as aware of beer cans being all over my house or bottles of wine everywhere. I'm like, I don't want that any more or less than I want the latter. So I mentioned that to some friends and family we were talking to at dinner, and they were baffled by what I said. Like, it's not the same. I said, it's the exact same.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the same. Like, it is literally the same thing. One is not above or below the other. I said, I mean, if we're going to get into stats, I said more deaths and injury and violence is caused by alcohol than it is in terms of cannabis. I said, I'm not going to get into the stats of that. I said, I'm just saying that my approach to it is very, very much a responsible approach myself. I said, but I treat it the same. So again, it was having those conversations I found more challenging, and I think will be for a while, than, let's say, our kids, which I think will be so open and, oh yeah, like, and so like understanding, and it'll be, I think, very, very different in terms of that.
For sure. I have an uncle who has apparently smoked cannabis his entire life, and definitely my entire life.
Right.
I never knew.
Right.
my whole life, I never knew. I only found out as a result of having this podcast.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, he never shared it with me. He knew that I struggled with, or no, not that I struggled with, that I consumed cannabis as a teenager.
Right.
And I definitely didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. And one of the things that I'm going to see him this holiday season. And one of the things I'm going to be asking him, and we're going to have a very uncomfortable conversation about why did you think it was okay to not reach out and say, hey, you're making some choices and it's really upsetting your mother, who is my sister, right? Like, as my uncle, my sister is very upset by your life choices. I'm going to give you some advice, or I'm going to speak to you about this, and I'm going to let you know that this is something that I do, and here's how to do it to become a millionaire. Like, you want to be a millionaire? This is how you do it, and this is how you can consume cannabis and still become a millionaire.
Yeah, or if you need a safe person to speak to, or I am your older, wiser uncle who's been through this, feel free to ask me questions.
Yeah, and in my youth, I had nobody. Like, I only had, the only support network that I had around cannabis or drugs in general was my friends, right? And then I'm getting the advice that, like, their uncle, like, they have a cool aunt or uncle who,
or a big brother
who gave them a piece of advice, and then I'm taking that secondhand advice, and I'm going to be making my life choices, things that are going to mold me as a human. Like, I remember taking somebody else's advice on, like, what courses I was going to take in high school, right? And, like, that's a bad decision, right? Like, the people who are supposed to help you make those decisions are supposed to be your parent, your
not your peers,
your grown-ups, the grown-ups in your life, whoever those people are, right? Those are, and I didn't feel comfortable with any of those people because I was being so shamed for the decisions that I was making. But I just, like, I look back and I feel like that might have been my intuition telling me things like that, but I didn't know how to listen to that. And, like, the guilt that I felt and all of those things that go with it.
Yeah. And you had, I think, older people in your life that didn't know how to navigate it. Right. They just don't know it's bad, or it's this way. So they don't know how to navigate it. And then you're looking for that guidance and they're lost. And you're like, well, I'm going to figure it out myself. And it's like, well, and it kind of breaks down from there, I think, in many ways.
My family was always very open. I actually consumed with my mother and my uncle, who was a diplomat for Canada. So there's highly functioning people who, even before it was legal, were consuming. But going back to what you were saying about your conversation with your family, Stephanie, that's exactly what Highladies podcast is about. That first conversation was difficult, and you were probably surprised by some of their views. But 100%. They, I bet, went home and went, that's an interesting, you get those cogs going, and you have those difficult conversations. Every time you have the conversation, it's less difficult. And it's an easier conversation, and you're given more tools and things to think about. And that's really kind of what we're trying to do with Highladies, is spark a conversation, spark some thoughts. We're not all going to end up in the same place with it.
Right. Absolutely.
But if we have the language and we know that we're not alone, then it's a safer, healthier in all ways.
Absolutely.
Going back, we were talking about this, this long history of stigma. And there's the idea of the gateway drug. You're going to have cannabis, and then next week you're going to be on heroin.
Right.
I'd love to say, yes, it is a gateway drug. It's absolutely a gateway drug. But the gate's going in the opposite direction.
Yeah. It's going to being healthier.
You're going to drink less.
You're going to be happier.
You're going to use less pharmaceuticals.
You're going to be nicer to be around.
You're going to enjoy your meals better, enjoy your children better, enjoy sex better, put up with your husband a little bit better. Like, I'm going to deal with you, dude. You don't need to be hot. Yeah, because you're fucking annoying.
That's amazing. That's so amazing.
I don't know about you, like, so for, like, your husband doesn't really consume.
No.
A little bit, but not really. I'd say 3 times a year for
Yeah, he was trying for a bit, but he'll eat cannabis. He loves to microdose mushrooms, but he's not a cannabis person.
And that's okay.
He knows that I'm a better person when I'm on cannabis, so he's always supported my cannabis use.
Yep. And then for me, like my husband and I both consume about the same amount. But if he and I are having a conversation and one of us ticks the other one off, I know that there's like a level of ticked off that I have achieved when he walks straight downstairs to where we roll. He rolls and then he walks outside and doesn't say anything. And I'm like, oh shit. Okay. Give him
Signal.
6.5 minutes. And then I will go downstairs. I will roll one. I'll go meet him outside and I'm going to say, hey, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to. And it brings us together in some ways, right? Because it's kind of like, you've taken your chance to step away. I'm now going to go and do the same, but we're going to connect on this thing that we both enjoy.
Yeah.
And bring the level of tension down.
Tension comes down, and then we can have our real conversation because both of us are high and can't get like too angry with each other because it's exhausting.
I just thought of a Joe Rogan, one of his comedy specials. He was talking about cannabis and I can't remember which one. Doesn't matter. It's never left me. And he was talking about, how he's a cannabis consumer and an activist for it. And he's like, I don't know what the problem is. Honestly, like, what do you think I'm going to do when I'm like around my kids and I'm high? I'm going to hug them too much. I'm going to feed them too much. He's like, I'm going to laugh with them too much. He goes, honestly, man, he goes, I'm the best dad ever. Like, it was just, it's never left me because when he said it, the way that he said it, I was like, that's interesting. Like, I never, it's those in conversation. It's sometimes literally as simple as hearing another perspective that has made me just question. Like, that's, I guess. Like, I never connected it that way. And it was as simple as that. Like, it was literally as simple as that I'm like, yeah, you do laugh a lot. And yeah, I mean, you get hungry. Like, yeah, I guess. Like, it just, yeah. And actually, it brings me to my next question. And I giggle because I just giggle. You'll see why in a minute. Smokers versus non-smokers. Can we be friends? So I
married one.
And I also am very aware in terms of your platform because I've heard it multiple times in terms of some of your episodes. So I'm very open to say I am not a smoker. It was not in my life in terms of lack of trying. If my husband were here or my friends were here, they would just laugh because it does not agree. And I don't know why I'm laughing because I don't know why. I don't know.
I have that same relationship with alcohol.
Yes. Now, wine for me is like my happy, like where I'm calmer or chill. For me, it's wine. And it's just, yeah. And I giggle because I have, many stories that people have been like, wow. Just wow. I'm like, I don't know, man. But the point I wanted to make was it's such a timely, I think this conversation is a timely reflection of cultural climate. And that means two sides to a coin for me. So I approach cannabis with a very, very high respect. I understand what it takes to grow and the work and the understanding. The very science of that alone, I have an unbelievable respect for. In terms of medicinal properties, I am a CBD proprietor. Advocate, if you will. It is what I will grab first and foremost in terms of ailments or headaches or inflammation. Like, what we use it for is a lot in terms of my home. And I say that very proudly. I've gotten my dad off of some pretty hard medication for his back, very hard meds that were very problematic for a lot of reasons. And he is now very much a CBC user.
CBD.
And I think all the happier health-wise for it. So my approach to cannabis comes from a very respectful point of view in terms of the craft itself and what it can serve. But myself, I cannot. But I think being able to have these conversations is incredibly important. And
so I think that's what brings us together is the conversation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So can smokers and non-smokers be friends? Of course we can be friends, right?
Yeah.
I always come back to driveway beers. So somebody who does not drink,
Okay.
driveway,
Yeah.
right? Driveway beers is an extraordinarily awkward situation for me.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Because somehow it is completely acceptable in the dead of winter to stand out on your driveway with your neighbors and each neighbor consume a 6-pack of beers.
Canadian pastime.
Right? That is completely acceptable. You stand out there for 2.5, 3 hours.
Stephanie's got her bottle of wine with a straw.
Right? You know, whatever your thing is. And then I'm out there. I don't drink. So I'm out there with like a bottle of water, right? And I'll decide to smoke a joint, right? And I will politely excuse myself from the circle. We all know the circle, right?
Absolutely.
So I step away. But I'm not leaving my property. I'm not going.
Just a respectful distance.
A respectful distance, so it's not coming. You smoke one joint, nobody has any issue. You come back in the circle, everybody laughs, we're having a great time. They're opening their 3rd or 4th beer, and I go step aside for a second joint, you know, maybe an hour, 2 hours after the first one. And that is when people go, you smoke so much. Right? And
how do you function?
Exactly.
Like, are you driving tonight? Because you've had 6 beers, 18 beers. Right. So how do you function?
Yeah.
I function just fine, thank you.
I'm perfectly fine. But if I was to turn around and say to somebody like, oh, wow, you drink a lot.
That's
right?
That's your 7th beer?
Is that right? That is offensive because you can't say things like that. But somehow it's still okay to tell a cannabis user that they smoke too much. And I have issue with that. I mean, and that's for me as a joint smoker. But people who don't understand cannabis can easily make that assumption, right? Like you can just see a lot of smoke going into somebody's lungs and then coming out, right? And when we're taught that the only thing that's supposed to go into your lungs is oxygen, right?
But I think that again goes back to the images and stereotypes we've been fed our entire lives.
Right.
Is, you know, the guy kind of on his couch, reefer madness, I can't do anything, I'm so hungry, oh, I'm couch locked, which is the opposite. Like, again, we all use cannabis for different things.
Yes.
I hate cleaning. I hate that part of being a mother. I hate that there's always laundry, that the floor is always dirty, and that I don't care enough for it not to be that way. So when I know I'm going to have to clean toilets and get down and dirty, I want to be slightly high because it just takes the edge off. I can enjoy it that much more. I'm not scrubbing that toy going, what the fuck? I went to fucking university for this. I could be like, wow, you know, I'm so lucky to own a toilet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sometimes it's just about changing your perspective.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes people just need to have their perspective changed.
Yeah.
Right?
Or widen a little bit instead of just widen it a bit.
Yeah. So I'll give an example that has nothing to do with cannabis. But I overheard somebody say something about small communities, that it's normal for small communities to be racist.
Okay.
And I went, I was done, and I just went, that's not normal. And I was not even a part of the conversation. And I think if I had been less into myself or more into myself, I probably wouldn't have said anything. Right? But I said, hey, it's never normal to be racist. It's never normal for a community, for an individual, nobody. And they were like, well, you know, but it happens more in small communities. And I was like, okay, that might be the case, but you can't say it's normal for this to happen.
That'd be like saying like murder is normal in big communities because it happens more there.
Right.
Right.
No, it's not normal. Like you have to be okay with your, like you have to think about the words before they come out of your mouth. Right.
Yeah.
And it just took that for this other person to go, huh, hey, thanks for saying that, because I didn't realize how it sounded when it would come out of my mouth. Right.
Well, that's cool that they were receptive.
Very receptive to it. Right. And some people need to be made uncomfortable. Right. Like I've been made uncomfortable many times in my life. And at first it's really uncomfortable. You're like, I'm so embarrassed. I'm ashamed of what I've said. I'm this, I'm that. I can't trust myself. I should never speak again. But then you think about it, you sit back and you go, wait a second. Okay, anyone could have made that mistake.
And you're learning, right?
And I'm going to do better next time. So then you do better the next time.
Yeah.
You need to be made.
This idea that cannabis users are stoners or unproductive, I find that to be one of my biggest pet peeves.
That's my offensive.
Yeah, I use cannabis, but it doesn't mean I'm stoned all day. I don't get up and smoke a joint and get my kids ready for school. I get my kids ready for school. I have priorities just like any other adult.
Yeah. Right.
If I'm going to work, I am going to work sober. I'm not drinking before work. I'm not getting stoned before work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know there's a time and a place.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what works for you. Right?
Yeah. Like that's me.
Right. So everybody has their own thing, right? Like some people do. They wake up, they get stoned, they get their kids ready for school, they make breakfast, they make lunches, they walk them 3 kilometers to school, and then they walk back home, and then they go to work, right? Well,
Everybody's different.
Everybody's different, and that's okay. And I think that's sort of what it all comes down to, is that like we can all be different, and we can all get along if we just talk about it, right? And if you're uncomfortable with something, like go and talk to that person and be like, hey, I'm a little uncomfortable with this, and then maybe they're going to share something with you, and your whole perspective is going to change.
Yeah. I just think we need to get back. And like I said, the cultural climate of what's happening now, we need to get back to, it's okay if we don't agree, but be able to say that. Like, we do not have to agree. That's okay. And we can still be friends, and you can
still have a conversation without fighting.
Yeah. And I think that's so applicable in many ways. And I think that's where this is. It's like, I don't have to emulate your lifestyle, and I also don't have to judge it. Because if I've learned anything in this pandemic, it has been, well, like many of us, the inward gaze of looking at ourselves, having to sit with ourselves, questions a lot of things, and then reemerge into society as if nothing happened. It's like, no. I think that introspection has really opened a lot of people up to, I think connection is the most important thing. And we do not always have to agree, and we can still have the conversation. And I also think, and I want to say this too, it's okay to be a little uncomfortable. It's okay.
Yes.
Like that really, it's really, really okay. You don't have to, it doesn't have to change you, but if it causes you to have a slight discomfort a little, maybe it's needed. Maybe.
Yeah.
And I've
maybe
been
that's something you need to think about. What is it about that situation, that person, that conversation that makes you uncomfortable, and really dive into that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Am I uncomfortable because I feel threatened, or because I don't agree with your point of view, or I don't feel I can be in this landscape because I don't have the language for it? Yes. For example, like sometimes my husband will try and get into a political fight with me, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I stopped watching news mid-pandemic, so I can't have this conversation with you because I don't know what's going on in the world by choice.
Yeah. And I will say, in terms of what Amanda had mentioned too, driveway beers, I've also been in that situation, and it has forced an introspection for me, which was very difficult, because I've been in a situation where everyone was smoking. I was not. And then I was uncomfortable. And then we had a conversation after and about why was I uncomfortable. And it took a while to arrive at my conclusion. And this is going back a little while now, but nonetheless. And I was witnessing people that I adore, that are friends of mine, that were smoking. And it contradicted, it disrupted an image I had. And I didn't, unbeknownst to me, like, it's not like I went in there understanding this. This took a lot of it, like a lot of reflection. It's like, why was I uncomfortable? I was not in danger. I was not being pressured. Like, it wasn't like everybody was great. Everybody was incredibly respectful. Like, I'm like, so why am I uncomfortable? Why am I uncomfortable? And it was that, because what I was watching was something that was disrupting a belief that was ingrained in me. And I didn't know what to do with that. And I'm like, no, like subconsciously smoking's bad. And these are my friends, and these people are wonderful. And now I don't know what to do with what I previously thought.
Yeah.
So now it's like, oh my gosh, like now where does that leave me? So now where do I fit in this? And that's what it was. It was something was completely contradicted for me. And then it was like, no, this is my shit. It's like, no, I have to figure that out for me. That's me. And it took that discomfort. And again, by the way, like we are still ridiculously close. And now we have those open conversations. We're like, but it took that. And and it's,
I think they call that growth.
Yes, I think that's the term. Yeah.
And it's interesting. I feel like the more modes of communication we have in the culture, the worse we get at communicating.
Oh, for sure.
Like being able to have that conversation where we're on different sides of the debate or the table, that is what life is made of. I love conversations like that. But now we have so many forms.
It's the technology. Mm-hmm. For me, that's all it is. If we take the screen away and like you and I came and sat and had a cup of tea together, we could talk about anything in the world and we could have a lovely conversation and we could be on opposite sides and we could be debating each other for hours about it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm going to say, thank you for coming to my home. I had a lovely conversation with you and you've really given me something to think about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm probably going to think about it. And I might change or alter or question my own thinking as a result. I might go, at the end of it, no, that person is total batshit crazy. Right? And continue on my merry way. But I'm not going to have any less respect for them. I'm not going to not invite them for tea the next time.
I think that's having a physical person in front of you and not a screen or, just words. Yeah. That people feel that they can, stand on their soapbox and back to where we were though, like this is it. Like if we have conversations about all the things that make us feel uncomfortable, then they'll feel less and less uncomfortable because we'll learn the language around it. We'll learn that we aren't alone, that we can have this conversation and that you'll still want to talk to me again. A funny sidebar. I was packing up for the cabin last summer to go to the cabin. And I had my 3-foot lemon haze plant in the front porch. It was going to be the last thing that we went in the car.
Okay.
And I'm hot and sweaty, and we got the dog in the car. The minivan's full. And I hear this knock on my door. Who the fuck is at my door? It's the principal of the school. Standing there next to my cannabis plant.
Okay.
And what did he, why was he there, Annie? He was there to give me flowers because I am the head of the parent council.
Oh,
and
that's wonderful. And
I went white. I thought, oh my God, now he knows.
Yeah.
He's not going to see me the same. He saw me as this high-functioning mom who's super involved and really gives back to her school. And now he's just going to see this plant. And his perception of me is forever going to be changed.
Right.
And I told Amanda that after he looked at the plant and then he looked at me and would not take eye contact off. And we're both like, we're just going to do super laser eyes and pretend that there isn't a huge stinky plant. And we'll just pretend the elephant isn't right there growing next to you. So I called Amanda going, oh my God, the principal knows. He saw my plant. And she said, well, that's why we're doing this podcast.
Yeah.
Because now he's going to see that you are a functioning parent, that you are super involved. And you grew a plant.
Yeah.
Not a big fucking deal. But my immediate reaction was to go into my shell, hide, find an excuse. Where did that thing come from?
Yeah.
Oh, kids. Pajama.
My 8-year-old.
My 8-year-old. Hey.
Oh, my 8-year-old. Yeah. And that is
8-year-old under the bus.
And I think if we took that situation, like I said, it's applicable if we change the narrative a little bit in a lot of ways right now. And it's the comfort of being ourselves without judgment.
Yeah.
And addressing the perceptions, being open to conversations, being open to the very idea that I might change your mind.
Or that you might change mine.
Maybe I won't. Maybe I will.
Now, when I approach those situations, often I'm coming in not even with maybe I'll change your mind, but maybe I'm just going to give you a different perspective to see things through. So my sister and I have very different perspectives in life and in everything that we do. So she's always trying to change my perspective. She says, you could do this. this is why you should do it, and here's the proof that it works. And then the energy that I come with is like, hey, have you ever thought of this?
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
and it's the approach, right?
Yeah.
Equally ineffective, though.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? Like,
from both. Yeah.
Because we're both coming with this, like, trying to influence.
Yeah.
Right? Where it should be, hey, and that's, I think, where I've changed is like, hey, here's just another thought.
Right.
It's one of the reasons, like you were saying about, where I think before we started recording about getting vaccinated, and we were talking about whether or not you to disclose vaccinations and all of these things. I still haven't told my sister. Because I just know it's going to be a problem, and I know that also because I know it bothers her not knowing. So I like to dangle that little carrot. But perspectives need to change, I guess, is what where I'm loosely trying to get to, is perspectives. And if we approach situations from a place of goodness, right, where I'm not trying to force my anything onto you. I just genuinely want to know what you think of anything, fill in the blank, right? I just want to know what you think on this topic. And if your opinion doesn't align, that's fine. That's your opinion. I asked for it. Yeah. Okay? Like, I came to you and I was like, hey, I want to know. So you shouldn't feel uncomfortable telling me what your opinion is, because here I'm the one asking for it.
Yeah.
Right.
I think if we, whether it's cannabis, whether it's vaccinations, whether it is, I don't even know, race, sexism, I mean, wherever you want to go, the divide, I think, is the issue. Yeah. And I think the choice, hopefully, as we progress, that the choice becomes more apparent, that it's not about that. It's not about the choice. It's just about the divide. And if we can get there, I hope.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think through conversations like we're having today, Stephanie, and the conversations we have on Highladies, that is where we kind of get there. And it is a slow process, but it's a natural process. And it would mean a lot to me to know, I mean, it means a lot to me to know that you listen to the podcast. I love it when I hear that people who are not cannabis users per se are finding something in our conversations, because it is a universal conversation. What it is to be human, to be a woman, to be a mother, to want to be better, to be a partner. How do we, we choose these people to partner with in our life, and how do we do that in a healthy way for us, a healthy way for our children? And again, it's, not feeling that you don't have a support network, that you can't talk to people. And so with Highladies, even though we are cannabis centric, we are really just talking as women, mothers, humans in this current world, and how we're trying to navigate what works for us, what doesn't work for us. Amanda and I have very different approaches, and I think through that, our listeners and the people we interact with, they have different approaches. And if we can just see that everybody's coming from a slightly different angle, but we're all kind of in the same area, that's okay. That's a good thing. Yeah. If we were all exactly the same and had the exact same morals and thoughts and likes and dislikes, how fucking boring would that be?
I agree. I could not agree more. Ladies, I want to thank you very, very much for this. This was incredible. So thank you so much for taking the time. And I will make sure that there are links and info in the show notes for us in terms of the Highlady podcast. But thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you, Stephanie. Have a fabulous day.
Bye, ladies.